Hello everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of boards, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where we take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, I'll be reviewing the source book Valan's Guide to Ormpetarr, designed by Jean Ousmane, aka Stormcrow Dreamscapes, aka Valan de Gaelin, I think. We'll get into that in the review. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you are interested in a sponsored review, you can reach out to me via email, Twitter, or Discord, or my submission form at roguewatson.com. And if you enjoy the content, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Welcome to another episode of Eric Learns Geography and History about the Forgotten Realms. There's been a couple of these episodes now, and I think the last review I did from this designer, I also learned about a location from the Forgotten Realms. Fun fact, you will not find Ormpetarr anywhere on the standard Forgotten Realms map that is actually at the official Wizards of the Coast website. That map, which is pretty big and covers all of the Sea of Swords and islands and things, and then the Sword Coast, and then a pretty good distance east of the Sword Coast. It's a good sized map. Ormpetarr is not on that map. I had to pull up an older map, or including a lot of fan maps that have been designed, in order to find it. It is, if you go south of, I feel like I'm describing a location now to just like friends trying to get them to go somewhere. South of Baldur's Gate, you'll reach the region of and if you go east of there for quite a ways, you will finally reach the city of Ormpetarr in the area of the Valan Reach. It's the actual region it's in is called Sespech, I believe, and it's next to one called Chondath. It is southeast of Cormyr, and I think Cormyr, I'm not sure if that one's on the 5e map or not. Anyway, so it's not exactly on the Sword Coast, but it does exist in the Forgotten Realms. And if you have seen the designer's previous review, which I would really recommend, which was Halfling and Hops, a Gazetteer of Luaren, you will get not quite, I think, the level of satisfaction that I got with that product. It's almost a bummer that I reviewed that one first, because that one was really particularly awesome. This one, it's a smaller product. It doesn't do like a lot of the bigger adventure things or extra backgrounds. It really just focuses on a single city in a single region, which is not a terrible thing to focus on. I think having these kind of bite-sized source books is perfectly fine as a way to kind of a la carte your way through information and historical context. I do really like the way that this product is written, and a lot of times whenever we have these so-and-so's guide to something or cauldron to everything or whatever it is the thing, a lot of times I will see folks will have an in-universe character as the presenter of the product, and then maybe that in-universe character will provide a forward, which is the case here, and then you'll never see them again. Or they may appear as sidebars with like funny little quips or anecdotes or something throughout the book. Those are the two main ways that I see people use in-universe characters, of which is becoming increasingly popular to where now I'm kind of almost surprised when people give me a source book with information that's not couched by, written by like an in-universe character. But this one even goes a little bit further to where I don't know if I've actually seen another product do this, where the entire book is actually written by this in-universe character, to where the cover even says it's by this character. So I don't know if Valan de Gaelin is a real it's not a I mean it's a half elf from Erebar, so they're not a real person, they're a bard, they're in universe. But the designer went so far with this thing that the book is credited towards this person on the DM's Guild, which is kind of shocking. But it's written in that character's voice, the entire thing, not just the sidebars, not just the forward. The entire thing is actually written in this more casual, friendly style. Now, that is a tricky line to walk, because you can do that, but if you end up being too jokey and too, like, I don't know, chummy, and making just too many comments and jokes, like, it gets really eye-rolling and really tiresome, and I don't think would make for a good read. Thankfully, that's not the case here. I think this one is actually toes the line very, very well between informative and knowledgeable, and then also interjecting a few little fun anecdotes and, quips and things in there throughout the entire thing. So it's actually a really, really pleasant, enjoyable read because of that. And I think it might be the first time where I've seen something like that. It was, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example here. So you get a lot of information about the Great Bazaar of Ormpetarr. The final paragraph says, "To me, the bazaar isn't just about buying and selling. It's about the stories that every vendor and item carries. When I see the importance of money in our world, I've always found the endless chase for wealth a bit perplexing. Life's value goes beyond gold coins. Speaking of stories, let me mention Sister Ariella." And then it goes into a sidebar of this certain character. That's a really cool, clever way. And before that, it doesn't even read like that. It's just kind of the normal, like, hey, this is, how this thing works, and here's what I know about this thing. And then it'll go into, it tends to do like the end of the section might go into like some kind of anecdote or something. Honestly, it's really impressive and very, very well read. I have nothing but praise for that. This is another good example, talking about the Iron Hand Forge, and it's made by this half-orc blacksmith who's, well-renowned. And then the final paragraph says, "But I heed this warning. Negotiating with Vulcan over price is like trying to convince a dragon it doesn't need its hoard. His prices are as fixed as the stars of the constellation Mistra's Circle." Just including some fun little comments and things there. So quite an enjoyable read throughout. My biggest criticism, however, is, and this may just be the source itself, the Chosen City. I just didn't find it that interesting, unfortunately. Like, Ormpetarr, it's kind of a utopian city. Like, it has this somewhat, traumatic backstory, I guess, where it was really affected by the spell plague in a bad way, and it was taken over by this evil group called the Order of Blue Flame, and there were the Dark Times. But then it was just kind of pushed back by this nice heroic hero. And now it honestly reminds me of kind of a Greek or Roman city but an idealistic version, like where everything just works, right? Like the citizens are happy to contribute to the community, I guess, pay their taxes. It's quite a, capitalist society from what it looks like, though. And yet it's also one that has pretty much all of its culture is through religion. So it's got all these different gods are represented in their own areas, and they all coexist very nicely. So, for example, it's got, I had to write these down. The justice halls are devoted to Tyr. The bazaars, the Great Bazaar is run by the clerics of Joaquin, the god of capitalism. There's a cool, like, pyramid cemetery thing that's run by Kelimvor. And of course, the battle hall is run by Tempest. Like, literally just every single one of the major Forgotten Realms gods. None of the evil ones, though, all like the neutral and good ones, are pretty much all here and represented. The Emerald Enclave is a major element here. There's a lot of druids. I'm not sure why in a city. It doesn't seem particularly like nature-y, but I guess it's just a city that kind of works in a lot of ways. It's similar to my complaints about the Radiant Citadel from Journeys of the Radiant Citadel, where it was like a really nice utopian city that just doesn't make it that interesting to visit, frankly, or adventure in. And I'm not saying, every town doesn't have to be a hive of scum and villainy or just be this, Wild West, thing. But like, there's not even like, corrupt politicians or, nobles that are fighting at each other or anything. The only thing that I found that was somewhat interesting is actually here on this page, where it has talk about the Arcana Security Tower, where because they had this horrible history with the spell plague and I guess kind of blamed magic for a lot of it, you actually have to register as if you're a spellcaster at this security tower, and then they kind of, try and keep magic well regulated. Which you could look at that as being, well, that's kind of fascist of them if they're, clamping down on that. And yet none of the other aspects of the city I got were like, there's not like patrols of armed guards everywhere or, hunting down, spellcasters. It's more like they just kind of have a responsibility for magic, which frankly you probably should have in this universe, where you can have people controlling all kinds of power with spells. And it's like, hey, you know what? You want in our city, you're going to have to be registered as a spellcaster because that's a powerful thing that you can have. And I don't know. I didn't even disagree with it. So I didn't find a lot of drama, a lot of notable things about the city, I guess, unfortunately. Like, it's next to this lake called the Naga Water, which has some Nagas in there, but even the damn Nagas are friendly. Even the Nagas are friendly. So I don't know. I didn't find too much of the drama that I was looking for to make it interesting. Or unfortunately, this product also doesn't have like story hook ideas or adventure. It does have urban encounters, which I'll get to in a second. Now, it does have all these sidebars, and these sidebars, which are these green backgrounds, they do kind of represent some interesting story ideas. That's about as far as we get, though. They don't go into full-on quests. They're just kind of they're incepting like ideas for the reader to be like, hey, if you wanted to take this into something, you could. I do wish there were some more, I don't know, structured quest ideas or something. So some of the sidebar story ideas would be there's a mysterious map in a sea tavern. There's a possible thieves guild hidden in the city. That cemetery pyramid area, of course, has a secret sealed chamber somewhere. There's an innkeeper who acts anxious during full moons. There's a mercenary group called the Dolphins, I think, that their leader may or may not be a bronze dragon, which is kind of cute. There's a whole big sidebar on this theory. So, and these are all told as very cool, like little, anecdotes from Valan. I love that. That really adds a lot of important context to the city and does, expand on the possibilities. I kind of wish that we had a little bit more structured of quests line, quests and maybe, Dramatis Personae and then the whole thing to really make it easier for me, the reader, to be able to take different ideas versus reading this as just a kind of cut and dry source book and then realizing, okay, I guess I could turn like this into an interesting idea that then could become a quest or something. Like, thus far, I'm not seeing a reason to visit this city, but I could use like individual, like the idea of the innkeeper being, anxious during a full moon and being meticulously neat and kind of having a secret back there, or this merc group dragon thing. Like, I could take those elements and add them to whatever, city I'm running. And then finally, we get a appendix with a bunch of encounters. Now, I do appreciate that we get over 20 urban encounters to use for Ormpetarr. This is a section that I was really hoping would help bring the city to life, because that's what encounters should be doing and should give proper, adventuring context, or at least just reflecting like what the city is like. So I appreciate that. It is going to be a pro for me. There is a but. The but is that some of them are a little generic, right? Like City Watch Patrol or pickpocketing or a wild animal or street performers. Like, yes, that's fine. Technically, that happens at any city, right? Like, I can use that literally in any single urban encounter event. What I was hoping to get are things that would specifically be tied to this. And maybe that's part of the problem, is the city itself. I'm not getting enough of a theme to use. There's no like breakdown of the different factions or nobles or, ruling government or anything to where I couldn't get enough of a reflection of what makes this city more interesting. Then it just kind of comes off being a little more generic. And unfortunately, these encounters kind of reflect that, where there's a lot of just generic encounters. The few ones that are maybe interesting would be like the Arcana Security Patrol. So I guess they are kind of marching through a little bit. Mage hunters in uniforms. And then like Wemmick Nomads, there's a whole area near the city called the Golden Plains. It has a bunch of, they're basically centaurs, but they're lion centaurs called Wemmicks. So having them in the city would obviously be pretty reflective of this specific area. So only like a handful of them actually feel like they reflect this specific city versus just, cities in general. But, ultimately I am pleased that we at least got this section for urban encounters. All right, let's go over my pros, because it's a pretty short product. Only about 20, actually it comes out at 39 pages. All right, my bad. 30 pages of information, about 10 pages of encounters. Let's go over my pros and cons for Valan's Guide to Ormpetarr. Pro, Valan's voice shines as friendly, knowledgeable, and full of lovely anecdotes. As I mentioned at the beginning of this review, that is a high praise for me. I think source books have the potential to be really, really boring because it's a lot of just info dump, right? It's history lessons, it's a lot of proper names and nouns, and it can be tough to read as a DM. This one, thankfully, not only obviously is the layout just perfectly fine with, it's just easy to read from this. It's not like huge blocks of text anywhere. They did a good job with, putting in some artwork and sidebars, but also the actual text was impressively fun to read through because of that voice. I really enjoyed reading. Like, I feel like Valan is just a nice guy who enjoys the city, has a few like, eyebrow wiggling, things to talk to you. I don't know. It's hard for me to describe how much I enjoyed reading this versus other products because of Valan's voice specifically was very enjoyable. Pro sidebars that tease possible story hooks and adventure ideas around the city. This pretty much saved the book for me, honestly. If it weren't for these sidebars, I don't know how much value this book would have. Obviously, it's got some information there, history and just a kind of breakdown of all the different areas. But the content that I'm always looking for is why. What does that matter? Like, how does this play into an adventure game that we can use to make it interesting? And this stuff does, and thankfully a lot of it does give me actual proper people and events that are happening. There's a rash of like stolen artwork in one case, of which apparently Valan is sort of involved with. One of the theater patrons that can play and got kind of caught up in this little scheme. Like that kind of stories is really, really fun. And I really appreciate having these sidebars. That gives a lot of great information. That being said, I still wish we got a little bit more quest stuff. And pro, over 20 urban encounters. I mentioned I did put that on my pro section, even though I have some quibbles. I wish they weren't so generic, but that's fine. Cities are cities. I get it that you're going to have, the same similar urban encounters from city to city. I just wish there was maybe a little bit more of an attempt to make more of them more reflective of this particular city, although that may be the problem is that maybe the city just doesn't have enough interesting stuff going on in of itself. And then the con, you can pretty much guess, is that Ormpetarr is... I described it as it's a little too utopian, maybe, and that makes it boring, I think. It just doesn't have enough distinction about it from other cities, and everything in the city just kind of works pretty well. Everybody does their thing. There's just not a lot of drama, not a lot of conflict, and thus it's just not super interesting from an adventuring standpoint. And if that's the case, then you need to put quest ideas in the surrounding lands that players can go to. Make it so this is a quest giving hub rather than a place where we can have quests in the place. And I didn't get that either. I didn't necessarily get a lot of other areas that we can go and explore and do quests from there. So a little bit disappointing from that standpoint. Final verdict, Ormpetarr isn't the most interesting city in Faerun, but Valan is an excellent storyteller and historian, helps make Valan's Guide to Ormpetarr an enjoyable and informative read. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on the YouTube channel, and you can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Thank you.